Hello everyone. Before starting the lesson, please try this warm-up. Write the input/output as ordered pairs. The first one is done for you. Input 1, output 2, ordered pair. In brackets, 1, 2. So do that, write ordered pairs for each set of input and output. Then answer the question, is this a function? How do you know? Pause the video. Complete this warm-up. Here are the ordered pairs, 2, 4, 3, 6, 4, 8, and 5, 10, written as ordered pairs. Is this a function? Yes. How do you know? Each input has only one output. If you'll recall from the previous lesson, that's how we know if this table represents a function or not. This lesson continues on the theme of functions. However, the focus shifts to representing functions as mapping diagrams this time. So we're going to talk about what mapping diagrams are, and we're going to distinguish between functions and non-functions using these diagrams of sets or mapping diagrams. So here I have a list of ordered pairs. Now in each ordered pair, it's a pair of input with output, etc. So I can take my list of ordered pairs and I can split out the inputs and the outputs, and I can create what's called a mapping diagram. The input 1 maps onto the output 2. The input of 2 maps onto the output of 4, 3 maps onto 6, 4 maps to 8, 5 maps to 10. And this diagram is called a mapping diagram. All the inputs map onto the corresponding outputs. So what I'd like you to try on your own is draw a mapping diagram to show the corresponding inputs and outputs in the set of ordered pairs. So here's the first set of ordered pairs. Turn that into a mapping diagram. Here's the second set. Here's the third set. See if you can create mapping diagrams for each set of ordered pairs. So pause the video and try this. See how you do. If there were any issues, it would be that you're repeating numbers when you don't need to. For example, in the first one, the output 3 happens twice, but you only need to list it once as output. But you would draw a line from 2 and a line from 3, because 2 maps onto 3, 3 maps onto 3. So you would just end up with 2 lines going to the 3. Over here, 1, 1, 1. So input is 1, 3 different times, but just list it once. It's the same input, but you're going to have 3 lines coming from the 1 to 3 different outputs possible for that one input. And here, A maps onto 3, B maps onto 3, C maps to 3, and D maps to 3. So you end up with a mapping diagram like this. Now, if you have a function table, it's really easy to turn that into a mapping diagram. Just take away the grid lines and replace them with these ovals. And then all you have to do is map your inputs onto your outputs, like this. That's pretty much all you have to do. Now, if you were to have repeated numbers in any of these columns, you would just have to list it once instead of more than once, and then just draw the lines from input to output. So try this on your own. Draw a diagram for the table. So I want you to take each input-output table and turn it into a mapping diagram. So pause the video, draw your mapping diagrams, and then check in to see how you did. The first one was pretty easy. Just looks exactly the same pretty much as the input-output table. The second one, The only real change I made was I just changed the order of the output numbers. I put them in order from lowest to highest. As long as you're putting your lines from the correct input to the correct output, then you're good. Now, try the same with these input-output tables. Create a mapping diagram for each. So pause the video, make your mapping diagrams, and then check in to see how you did. These ones were pretty straightforward too. Just remember, if you have a repeat, as it here, the output is 2, and the output is 2 here, you just have to list it once in your mapping diagram. Just make sure you have your lines going in the right direction and to the correct output. Now, both of these mapping diagrams, this one and this one, believe it or not, they represent the same function, even though they look different. If you follow the lines, 1 maps onto A, 1 maps onto A, 2 maps onto B, 2 maps onto B, 3 maps to C, 3 maps to C, 4 maps to D, 4 maps to D. The difference is the order in which the output is written. That doesn't really matter as long as your lines are written in the correct way. Each input matches or maps onto the correct output. So both of these mapping diagrams represent the same function. Now we can go the other way too. Instead of turning a table into a mapping diagram, we can turn a mapping diagram into a table. Like this. Input 1, 2, 5, 4. I just reordered it. Input 1, 2, 4, 5. I put it in order from lowest to highest. Make sure your outputs match the input. 1 maps to 3, so 1, 3, 2, 2, 5, 2, so 5, 2, and 4, 1, 4, 1. If you see this mapping diagram, notice that arrow right here is from the input of 2. So the input of 2 has 2 different outputs, 3 and 6. The input 3 doesn't have an output, so I didn't put it in my table. So now we can answer the question, do these represent functions or non-functions? Remember, a function has 1 output for each input. Well, if we look at the first one, each input has only 1 output. This is a function. If we look at the second, well, here's an input that has 2 different outputs. We see that here on the table. The same input is listed with 2 different outputs. This is not a function. So now it's your turn. Does the diagram represent a function? Either yes or no, but I want you to pause the video, take your time to think through this and see what you come up with, and then check back in to see how you did. The first one is not a function because if we look at this input, it has 2 arrows coming out of it. That signifies that it has 2 different outputs for the same input, not a function. The second one is a function because each input has only 1 line coming from it. It only has 1 output each. Same with the next one. Each input has only 1 output. The last one, this input, B, has more than 1 output. So it is not a function in this diagram. And here's a bonus question. Ava says this diagram does not represent a function. Here's the diagram. Explain her mistake. So take a look at this mapping diagram and explain why she is incorrect. She says this is not a function, but how do you know that it is a function? So pause the video, try this, see what you come up with, and check back in. Her mistake was not recognizing that 2 squared is 4, so 4, 4, that's the same output. So there's really only 1 output for this input. Same with this, 4 plus 1 is 5, so 5 and 5, that's the same output. So there's only one output for the input of 3. So again, each input only has one output. This is a function. And now it's time to practice. So you have a worksheet, functions and mapping diagrams practice, where you can practice switching between tables and mapping diagrams and answering the question, is it a function or not? And if you have any difficulties, please reach out for help as you practice.